we need to look at the whole need and the power of silence that leads us into a form and a way of listening that's very different than what the world. It's very countercultural. Today, culture doesn't really honor listening and silence. We're living in the chaos that creates. And we have to counter that. We have the power to say no to that and to offset it. But it resides in our choice to be silent, and out of the silence, we change our whole posture, our mind, our heart, our body, and we become receptive to the other person. And that is the act of love that is so often associated with the art of listening. Before I begin with the prayer, I just want to show you the book. Most of what comes from this comes from the book by Kay Glindle called The Sacred Art of Listening. And in it, Kay has 40 sessions on the different aspects of listening, all from a point of view of prayer. And that's what we're taking from her work, the gist of what we're doing today when we're together. I want to start with I'll begin with the opening prayer, and then I'm going to give you a mantra that we'll use throughout today's time together. It's very simple. I learned it when I was on a pilgrimage in Ireland, which was a marvelous experience. And it's a very simple mantra, and I say it all the time when I cross a threshold, any threshold, into my own home, into the garage, into church, into the grocery store, anywhere you go is a threshold. It's a new place. It's stepping from one place to the other. And we'll use that throughout. But to begin with, to welcome you, I want to turn to a blessing that John O'Donohue, some of you may be familiar with him, wrote in his book called Anam Cara. He was an Irish. He passed away in 2008 at a young age. He was in his early 50s. He was an Irish priest. He left the priesthood, but he was a theologian and a poet. And he just had a marvelous spirit. He was so in love with nature that a lot of what he wrote and a lot of the poetry and his theology stemmed from his relationship with nature. So if you will close your eyes and just take a deep breath, I'll begin with the blessing called a blessing of solitude. Oh, I must confess, I lost my glasses. So these are my glasses. So I will be doing this throughout. So I need to use this. Please excuse me. A blessing of solitude. Take a deep breath. May you recognize in your life the presence, power, and light of your soul. May you realize that you are never alone, that your soul in its brightness and belonging connects you intimately with the rhythm of the universe. May you have respect for your own individuality and difference. May you realize that the shape of your soul is unique, that you have a special destiny here and now, that behind the facade of your life, there is something beautiful, good, and eternal happening. May you learn to see yourself with the same delight, pride, and expectation with which God sees you in every moment. And may this time together be blessed. Amen. The mantra I wish to share with you is very simple, and I'll say it for you a couple times, and then we're going to say it together. And it's simply, I calm my mind, I open my heart, fully present to the thin places within and without. I calm my mind. I open my heart, fully present to the thin places within and without. Can we try to say it together? Ready? I calm my mind. I open my heart, fully present to the thin places within and without. You're comfortable with that? We'll say it periodically throughout, so we'll revisit it.
Nadine, I'm going to put it in chat for people, and I did not make out the word before the word places.
Thin, T-H-I-N.
Oh, I did hear it. Thank you.
The spaces that we can't see, the spaces between words, between people, the spaces where things go on and reality exists, but we don't see them. The thin places within myself and without. Let me give you just a little background because I deliberately stay away from credentials. I'm older, and credentials happened a long time ago. And so while they are very much a part of my life, I rather count on my experiences to bring me to where I am today. They couple with my education, but I value my experience at this point in my life more than perhaps the academic world. I go back to my childhood. When I was 5 years old, I started in kindergarten, which most children do. And my mother told me this story when I was in my 50s. I didn't know how this ritual in my family began. But my mother, some conversation we were having over lunch or something, and I said to her, how did the ritual of you and I, Mom, sitting down at the kitchen table every time I came home from school, and you had tea, I had a glass of milk, we had Ritz crackers and cheese every day I came home from school, from the time I was in kindergarten until I was in high school. And eventually when I left home, it stopped. But when I would go back, we would do it again. And we would talk, just she and I. And she said to me, well, that's because of you. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you came home from kindergarten one day. You had only been in school a week and a half or so. And you came home from school and I was scrubbing the kitchen floor. And you came to the kitchen door and you said to me, are you always going to be doing that when I come home from school? And she said, I heard you. And so from that day on, when you came home from school, my housework was done. I had the Ritz crackers and cheese on the table. I had the tea kettle going and a glass of milk from you. And we sat and talked. And that was because that's what you asked for. That was a very profound kind of, it was a relationship I had with my mother that was very special. Another time with my mother was when I was an older woman and we were, I had gone back to visit her. I was in the congregation of the Adrian Dominicans and I had to go back to the mother house in Adrian. My mother at the time was living just 60 miles away in a senior resident apartment. And so I had an extra day. So I went to see her and we had dinner. And after dinner, we were in the kitchen doing the dishes. And I have no idea what prompted me. I have to say it was the Holy Spirit because I was not thinking this at all. But as we finished the dishes, I turned to her and I said, Mom, what was it like to be married to Dad and to raise my Nancy and I? What was that like for you? And she opened up like a flower. She talked for almost 2 hours straight. And I sat there, I was just stunned at what came out of her. All this history, all this living, all her experiences just flowed from her, from that one simple question: what was it like for you? And I listened, with my whole being listened. I was just profoundly moved by her story. This was my mother, and I thought, oh my gosh, what if I had never asked that question? My sense was that no one had ever asked it before because of the way things flowed from her. It was a gift to her and to me. And I believe in my heart of hearts, it was prompted by the Holy Spirit. But it was an opportunity for me to just take it in, just take it in. And I was greatly moved by it. Those sorts of experiences that I've had in my life have grown out of my academic background, but it's been a journey in the art of listening and the art of communication. It's what I taught in college. It's what I learned that young people need to know more about, that it's at the crux of relationships, at the very heart of them, at the very heart of our understanding of ourselves. And it probably is the most powerful tool we have. It's prayer, it's connection, it's what builds relationships. And it's a powerful tool. It's a power that can counteract chaos and destruction. So it is that kind of framework that I bring to you. It's a deep commitment, and as I believe you have, and I believe you have all sorts of experiences in the art of listening and silence, rich, that bring you to this table today. We're going to do 3 sessions from Kate Kendall's book on the sacred art of listening. The first one is to look at listening to access our still point, listening to ourselves, listening to where God is within us. And I know you know that you've heard Father Thomas Keating and Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr all talk about interiority and silence within, and listening to the voice of God within yourself. And that, in essence, was what John O'Donoghue's blessing was for us. Listen to the voice within you. So you calm your mind, you open your heart, and let God speak. Prayer is living. It's living each day, and that's what you do so well. You relied on God, and there's, as I said, the power within that. The second session we're going to be looking at takes that still point within you, and it looks at possibilities, the prayer of possibilities, the innermost self that moves from the interior to the surface. And we look and we dream in the imagination about possibilities, how things could be different, the imagination. And that's a great tool when you think of the world today. How could it be different? What are the possibilities to resolve these situations that are so horrific? We know that if we turn to God, the answers reside there and the power resides there to make things different. And so that the second one is looking at our imagination for possibilities in the context of listening on the bedrock of silence. The final one has to do with listening for change. So interiority, possibilities, and change. How can we change this world? Nurturing nonviolence in the world begins with listening to those places within me where I can nurture peace. And that's probably the thing we need the most. We know we live in a world that craves for this kind of solution. And we have the key to that. We believe in it. Those of you who are in my little peace group or in the peace group that I belong to have heard me say this. Meister Eckhart, who's a a German, dead now, German Dominican theologian, said, "Nothing in all creation is so like God as silence." Nothing in all creation is so like God as silence. So we want to turn to silence and listen to the silence that exists within. And from that, the whole outcome of communication, silence, listening, interaction with others is to achieve understanding between of myself, understanding of myself in conjunction with others. It's powerful. It has the power to change the world. It has the power to reverse chaos and destruction. It's transforming. And that's what we're about. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 6, you're very familiar with this. But when you pray, go to your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Go to your inner room. We will do that today. There's nothing else and no one else can access your interiority. No one else but you. Well, God, yes. But no one else accesses your interior life but you. You are the guardian and you are the entrance to your interior life. And so when you go there, you go by closing your mind, by calming your mind, opening your heart, going into your interior self where God is waiting for you. And you want to calm your body so that you are in a position of total relaxation and openness to the voice of God. Let's take a moment to take a deep breath and calm our mind, open our heart, fully present to the thin places within and without. I'm going to read for you. It's just very brief, but it's what Kay Lindell says about listening to your access point. And then we'll look at a graph that she puts out, and I'll talk a little bit about the graph when we get to it. Have you ever noticed the discomfort with silence in our culture? A lot of it. Think about the last time someone called for a moment of silence in a public gathering. The first 10 or 15 seconds are usually comfortable, but after that, people tend to get restless and cough, rustle papers, cross and uncross their legs, and clear their throats. Notice what happens in daily conversation. It's as though there is an unwritten rule that whenever there's a hint of silence, someone must fill the vacuum with a rush of words. We start to talk faster and faster. Listening quickly takes a back seat to talking. The power of silence gives us breathing room. There's wisdom in the silence. It can alter our perceptions and ability to see what is happening. It provides clarity in the midst of chaos. One way to practice silence is to get centered within yourself. Take a few deep breaths before speaking. Ask yourself what wants to be said. What should be said next? Another practice is to turn off car radios, Alexas, your TV, all the gizmos that make sound and take your mind away from your interiority. See what it's like to be centered in the midst of traffic in silence, no car radio. After a while, you will learn to simply let it be and enjoy your own interior silence. It comes with practice. Power of silence is the power to slow things down and give us a chance to reflect on what is happening. Listen to the collective wisdom. Being present in your hearts leads to compassionate love and service. Imagine listening to silence as a global behavior. It's true, you and I know that the chaos that's in the world, that's on the news, it's so profound that one wonders what will break through. It's so necessary that we really take this seriously and see it as the tool with the ability and the power to transform. And that power resides within each of us. And collectively imagine what we could accomplish if we did it together, if we believed that it held the power to transform and change those awful things that are happening in our world today. We have to calm people down so that they will listen. They're not listening to one another. They're listening to some chaos. They're listening to their own emotional chaos that's inside. And that has to stop. I want to put up the graph. Now, before we put it up, Rosemary, I just want to say a little bit about the graph was intended by Kay Lindahl for us to focus on as it's a circle. All of the graphs are circles, and they're the circle of life. And within that circle, there are designs, different designs in each of the circle to match each of the sections. And what those designs are meant to do, it's talking about time in our life. It refers to the time of what is going on in our life, the circle of life and the time within. And what you will do is look at the circle, in this case, with a sense of your own interiority, what's going on inside of you now, moving down into your interior and paying attention in silence to what is being said. You may have your own way of doing that. You may have a special word that you have that keeps you focused on the silence and tries to obliterate any kind of distraction. But silence within and studying the graph, looking at the graph and seeing what the graph says to you. It's a circle of life in time. See what it says to you. Let it speak to you in the quiet of your own interiority. I want to give you about 5 minutes to do that. That may not be enough. You may want more, you may want less. You'll let me know that when we come back together. But we'll start with that and see how that goes for you. So Rosemary, we'll put up the graph. And take a look at it. And the graph is the innermost self. It represents what's going on inside of you. So take a while to just look at it, absorb it, but calm yourself down. So we're going to use our mantra, and then I will start with a gong. This, can you hear that? Rosemary, did you hear that?
Yes, I sure did.
Okay, and then I will do it again after 5 minutes, and that will bring us back together. So let's just take some deep breaths. Just relax, let your body relax, feet on the floor, be relaxed, whatever position works best for you. But make sure that your shoulders are relaxed, your feet are on the floor, your hands are not clenched, your jaws are not clenched. For the moment, I want you to close your eyes. You'll have to open them to look at the graph, but for now, Just close your eyes. Let's take a couple deep breaths. Take another one, another deep breath. One more deep breath. And now begin to breathe naturally. I calm my mind. I open my heart, fully present to the thin places within and without. Open your eyes and gaze at the graph. quietly and slowly come back to the room. Your innermost self may take a while to surface. Did you need more time? Did anyone need more time? No? Okay. I'm going to open this now for anyone who would like to share what those 5 minutes, what that was like for you. And then following that, any questions that you might have. Would anyone like to share their silence, what happened in that silence?
Hey Nadine, my name's Adam Garsky, and I
Hello.
found the graph almost very disturbing
Mm-hmm.
to looking at. I found it very distracting. My brain was taking me to all sorts of places about meanings and hidden meanings, and even trying to defocus my eyes and see, is there an image here? But the longer and longer I looked at it, the more quiet I felt myself become, and literally just found myself focusing on the middle of the circle in the empty space. And I think that's just where I found a calm in trying to shut off all the meaning and shut off all the interpretation and just be in the middle of that space. And that was my experience. That was very peaceful.
Thank you for sharing that. And that, thank you, because it points out that sometimes things can be discomforting for us, but bring us to a still point. Music can do that. Have you heard musicians can say they don't want to hear music as a meditative tool because they start analyzing the music score and because that's their background. So graphs like this may work and they may not. They may work now and another time they may not work. So thank you for sharing.
Leona, you're muted.
This is Chuck Schaller,
Although
and it was an interesting exercise for me because I do my silent prayer with my eyes closed. So I found it an interesting to just keep my eyes open because they continually wanted to close. And so I would say it was, I too tried to hold the entire image, which was a challenge. And so for me, it didn't really, it did not put me in a more peaceful, open awareness state because I was focused on looking at it.
Understand. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm Leona McElroy.
Hello, Leona.
Hi. I wanted to share that in the beginning, when I looked at the graph, I couldn't get anything out of it. And then when I closed my eyes and got centered and then opened my eyes again, what it meant to me is all that space that's covered is chaos and pain. And then when you get to the center represents peace.
Okay, thank you, Leona. Thank you. That's helpful.
This may be sort of a Rorschach test, but I saw it the same way, somewhat as Leona. The clouded portions are pain, evil, despair that we all go through in life. And there's times of peace and happiness that are represented by the areas that are not covered. The little figures that could look somewhat like a human form are all different in various ways. And that represents people. To me, that's what I was seeing, that all of us go through these periods of difficulty, evil, despair, but then we come back out into a happy place. And I so wanted to look at it and see love, because I am a fan of God's love, and I didn't see it. I saw what I would describe more as a reality of people throughout their life going through these rotating periods of happiness and despair.
Mm.
That's what I saw.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you.
I saw the empty spaces where the spirit lives, especially at the heart of it, the void, where the spirit is there.
You saw the empty spaces again, Nimala, as
I saw the empty spaces where the spirit lives, and I saw in the heart of it the void, which is the spirit.
okay. Thank you, Nimala.
Oh, this is David G. I've probably taken a remedial course because I was staring at it, and then after I'd nod off, and then I'd open my eyes and I'd stare at some more, and then I'd nod off. And then so finally I had to sort of be honest, stay away. I actually had to look at the patterns to try to figure out the patterns. And what I figured was that it was a swirl of flowers, and then everything that was in the flowers part was whitish, and then when the flowers left, they all turned dark. So that was my interpretation.
Okay.
So
Well, thank you, David.
This is Kate, and I spent some of the initial time looking at it very closely. And in so doing, I found all the energy in it, all of the outside, the inside, and swirling energy. And I was filled with curiosities, but without answers. And with the energy, I ended up in the middle, and it was just absolutely perfect.
Mm. Thank you, Kate.
Maureen.
Mhm.
This is Maureen. And I was struck by the balance between the filled in portions and the empty portions. And it seemed to me that's the kind of balance I'd like, that my mind has many things going on, but it needs that space, that empty space, in order for this to balance. And then the inner, the white space with the 8 extensions, I saw that each of those sticks out, so to speak. They're not all the same size. It's not a perfectly drawn figure. And then I thought, but that's life. It is not all perfect, and that's okay. And that's an important teaching for me. So with that.
Thank
I also saw balance and harmony. Even the filled in spaces were beautifully done. And there was nothing, to me, it didn't look anything formidable in those gray or filled in areas. I just saw a lot of balance and yeah, harmony. It was beautiful. I thought I couldn't find anything I didn't like about it.
Thank you, Laura.
For me, I found the inside, that 8-pronged star, I called it, to be the union of me and God and all of us and God, kind of the still point of creation. And I found like the commas, I call them commas on the upper left and lower right, were those black and white things in them. They're very much, as someone said, I think you, Laura, filled with energy and kind of very strong movement, almost like a tide. And I felt that those little white things surrounded by black in those commas are stars. And for me, those were carrying light, and that's the Holy Spirit in the world and in me, carrying that light, that energy to that white space that inevitably leads to the bottom of that 8-pronged star. So to me, it's a whole pathway of getting to that union of me and God, or us and God.
Thank you, Kim. Mary?
When I first looked at it, I looked at it from a very analytical perspective, and I was trying to see what the filling of it, and kind of looked at it and I thought there's only one space that doesn't have any of the stars or whatever that represents in it. And then I was looking at it and I realized that in the inner circle, not that 8-prong, but the inner circle, that all the circles that were white, that were filled in with white, had these stars around them, but the ones that were black didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at it from the perspective of the stars. I guess I entered into it from the perspective of my ability to be quiet and listen and have God fully present instead of everything around me. And so all the stars was just the world, noise, chaos, just world noises. And I realized that there's only one space to really go for the quiet. And yet when you went into the inner circle, there were 4 spaces, the ones filled in with black, that really allowed the spirit to be pure. And then when you got in to the center, that was sort of the ideal place.
Mhm. Thank you, Mary.
I have to echo some of the comments that I've heard. At first, when I looked at it, I was so distracted by all that was going on. I could barely stand it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I had to close my mind. I had to absolutely close my eyes. It was overwhelming me. And just start your mantra that you had taught us over and over again to kind of calm down. And then I went back and looked at it again and calmed down a bit and realized, oh, I see. Oh, the big picture of this, it's a yin and yang. Oh, this is not a big deal. This is just a balance thing of, the balance of space and presence and calm, and the base is, and then that other balance of more the commotion and the otherness of going on in our world. But it was a struggle to go through those 5 minutes to get to that point of moving out of just seeing details to a bigger perspective of what the image was depicting.
Mm. Thank you, Susan.
I took a very different approach. I wish I had taken it the way Kim did, but I started in the center and saw each of those spokes as being choices I make about how I spend my time and where I go. And all of them, you have to contend with something, but some of those paths take you to peace more quickly. And I took particular notice of the busy areas, which I saw that as your chaos or busyness or noise. And I saw that on either side, it went beyond the boundary of the image, which told me that it had gotten to too big a place. So just more about choices spoke to me.
Thank you, Rosemary. I don't want to cut anyone off. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Right. I have a few just general overall comments, nothing specific, but I just wanted to note, for some of you, this was very uncomfortable and something you don't normally do. That's all right. That's perfectly all right. Because there are many things in life that are uncomfortable for us to do, but we have to, we learn to adjust, or we learn to find a way to deal with it, even in our interior life. Things enter into our interior life that can be upsetting to us, and we have to deal with it and let it go. There are things in our background, and I'm wondering if today's world in any way influenced your response to this. If what's going on around us, the noise, the chaos, the destruction, the heartbreak that we all feel over so many things, the pandemic that we've come through has you brought to bear in looking at this, and somehow did that influence your response to it? One other question is, some of you looked at it, looked away, calmed down, gave it another chance, came back, and it was different. And that happens in life so often, doesn't it? It's like, at first I reacted this way to something, and then I pulled away and calmed down and did some self-talk and went back and saw it differently. It's an interesting exercise, and it's one that most of us don't do. We don't usually sit and look at something like this. And I think Kate Kendall Lindell had a motive for doing this, bringing us into something we're not totally familiar with, and how are we handling it? I once had a professor years ago in my other life who was an artist, and he had, the whole class was centered on sending us to museums to look at, to sit for 2 or 3 hours in front of a particular piece of artwork by a particular artist for 2 hours, and then write a dialogue between me and the painting. And at first, the first 3 or 4 times I did this, I thought, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. I don't know how to do this. And then eventually I was able to start writing. It was an assignment, so I had to do something. But it's interesting how when we are not real familiar with something, we have to adjust. That you did very well with that. And Kay uses these circles, these life graphs, to draw us into perhaps things that we don't normally address or have to deal with in our own private interior life. So it's just an interesting exercise. I thank you very much for your thought, for your willingness to participate in this, and for your sharing. Thank you. It enriched all of us. Rosemary, questions. Let's take the questions from this section, if there are any, before we move on to section 4.
If you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and pose the question. If we have more than one person, we'll start to call in order. We may have no questions at this point if you'd like to go on.
How do you do a question on the chat?
Just ask your question.
Ask your question.
Okay, I thought I was in a lineup. Nadine, coming back to something as with the art that you had to look at, or this, coming back, and then readjusting. Could you say anything over the readjustment that takes years? In particular situations where for some reason you've given it a great deal of thought, but it took years. The length of time, and then the need to go back, because it's something that is, you can't brush off. You can't just eliminate it from your life. Mm-hmm. So you go into yourself a lot to try to solve it or consider it. That's all. I don't know how to pose that question, but the years it takes and what drives you to go forward and back. It's not an assignment, but the silence is often in pain or in agony, depression of some kind. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you could add on that?
Well, let me, it's a tender question, and I want to just say to you that the work of the Spirit within us can take years. It's not something you can put a timer on, that I've spent 5 hours looking at this and there's no resolution. That isn't how God works. Sometimes there's no resolution to things for many years, and suddenly something happens, mm-hmm. Something enters your life.
Yes, yes.
And then it's clear. It's how the Spirit works. It's how God works. And it's the journey. And each of us has our own journey, our unique journey. And God works in God's own time. What I would say is, if someone can walk with you in that journey, not give you answers. The answers come in your interior life where God is. God is always there, always mm-hmm. there for you. And turning there is the ideal. Sometimes it takes a long time to get into the interior. That's not something that happens easily.
Yes.
It's practice. years of practice at sticking with it. And some of us have started out, I did myself, I started out doing 1 minute segments. I couldn't do 5, I couldn't do 20. I can now, but I couldn't in the beginning. And I would do 1 minute little during the day. I just stop, shut down, go into myself and try to be quiet for 1 minute. And I could manage that. And then that grew and it became more and it became easier, but it took a long time. It doesn't happen. The interior life doesn't, for most of us, develop overnight. But I would say to you, the work of the Holy Spirit is on the Holy Spirit's time frame. And if someone needs to have a companion on that journey to talk things through, that can be a good thing. That can be a help to kind of open up or clarify things. But in the interiority of yourself is where everything you need to handle the life that God has given to you, it resides within you. If you can keep going there.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. That's very good. I do think that if I've gone outside myself, going outside yourself, and say to a therapist or something, has made me more realize that I needed to go inside myself, and I had to do it. I mean, that it's more of an interior thing. The outside helps can they turn you to really realize how important it is to go inside yourself. And or maybe also the outside helps make you share this experience with it. You're not alone. That's, of course, you're not alone. Other people go through this or other things, but in turning inside yourself was, I feel that is my experience, that the turning inside yourself has helped, I think, over time, helped me more. Or I agree with you, Nadine. Thank you.
Well, and you've come to a very rich conclusion. Your experience is critical. For years, the church did not put experience in the realm of knowing God, coming to know God and coming to know your relationship with God. It valued doctrine, tradition, scripture, and it said next to nothing about experience. When I first got my level of training in spirituality and theology, it was the old pre-Vatican II language. When I went back after Vatican II, I didn't understand what they were talking about. I didn't think they were talking about theology at all, because everything was experience. They weren't talking tradition, they weren't talking scripture, they were talking, your experience is the way you know God. And I thought, and it was a whole new vocabulary. I didn't know, I thought I was in the wrong class. I thought, this isn't theology, I must have signed up for the wrong thing. And then I went to the professor who was a Jesuit theologian, and he said, Vatican II changed all that. We now look at experience as a valid way of knowing God, that God works through our experience. We must trust that. And where we go is in the interior of ourselves, where God is, and we work it through. Now, a spiritual director or guide or mentor, a good friend, someone who knows you well, that's what John O'Donohue talks about in Anam Cara, is having a soul friend. That's what this is. Maybe something that we desire and seek out and is helpful to us. Then that's what we do. We take those steps that become clear to us, that open up and resolve some of the pain, deal with some of the pain, so that you can look at it and say, this is what needs to happen. And God always is walking with you in that. So I thank you. I thank you for sharing that with us. It was a beautiful sharing, and I appreciate so much your willingness to do so. Thank you.
I appreciate your speaking on it. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. That was very moving. Thank you. Do you need some time to stretch, to get a glass of water? How is your comfort level before we move into the second listening for possibilities? Would you like to take a break or are you okay? I will take silence as okay and move on.
I think so.
All right.
Yep, I agree.
I'll ask you again after this section so that if you need time, we will have it. He then says that the possibilities, and this is where the imagination comes in. Once you've gone into the interior, many things may come into your imagination, which is a good thing. Daydreaming is a good thing. Not at the wrong or not if you're supposed to be studying, but daydreaming at an appropriate time can take you to places where you see things differently, or you see a way of handling something in a more positive way. The imagination is a very wonderful gift that God has given us. It allows us to see and make things out of the sky that God creates, the most wonderful artist of all. And so possibilities give us the gist that begins the process that can move us toward change, to resolve things, to perhaps correct things or do things differently in a more fruitful and positive way. And certainly today's world is calling for that. We may have something to we do have something to contribute to the resolution of the pain and suffering that exists, and to the harm we're causing to our earth. Reflecting on your experiences is a key to that. So looking at your experience, not just the big things, not the weddings and all the bigger events, but looking at the smaller things that happen in your daily life. Those are the things where God is working in you and that are particular to you. And the uniqueness of you is the journey that God is traveling with you on to open up the world for you. Some of you saw that graph in very different ways. Some of you had overlapping thoughts, but it is the uniqueness of you that you bring to the world and to the events in your life. I had an experience the other day in Safeway, and it was just a small thing. It seemed small at the time, but I was over there at 7 o'clock at night, just getting a few things. And my Safeway over near the Black Hawk Plaza has now enlarged itself. And the self-checkout is now very large. There's this comfortable space with its own entrance and exit and all these extra little, there are a number of places of little units where you can go to self-checkout. And at 7 o'clock at night, there was one cashier and one bagger. And people were in the self-checkout. I had 3 items and I thought, I'm not going to go to the self-checkout. I have, as a rule, go to the cashier because I'm noticing, why is there only one cashier? Well, because they have the self-checkout. They don't have to pay a salary to self-checkout. So I go to the cashier because I want her to have a job. So I got in line. I was the second in line, and she was just very pleasant, very lovely, and she had a good rapport with the young man who was begging. When I came up, she looked and smiled at me and welcomed me, and we did that. Then she looked at the line behind me, and then I turned and looked and followed her gaze, and there must have been about 9 people behind me. There were openings at the self-checkout, but there were about 9 people in line, all holding things in their arm. Nobody had the big cart. And and it made her nervous. She looked back and she said, she just turned to the bagger and she said, oops. And then she took a deep breath and I thought, she's nervous. So I said to her, I don't know where this came from. I just said to her, don't worry. When they get to you, they'll have a wonderful experience. And she looked at me and she smiled and she said, oh, what a sweet thing to say. And I said, well, it's true. When they get to you, it will all be all right. And she turned to the beggar and she said to him, to the young man who was begging, and said, did you hear what she said? And then she repeated it and they kind of laughed. And then she went on checking me out. And when I left, she thanked me and I asked me what my name was. And I thought, this meant something. This meant something to her. It meant something to me. And I have no idea. I don't remember reflecting and coming out saying that. I'm going to say this to her. It came. And I thought that's the Holy Spirit. It just came. And it's something that I thought I need to be conscious of more often, to say something to people that I'm working with like that, who are stressed. And so it's the small things, the small experiences in the day that can change us, that can calm us down, that can say, this is what's important. Take a deep breath, stay calm. Try to stay calm amidst so much that's going on. God builds on our experiences, value them. Check out what happened when you had a particular experience. What happened? What did you learn from it? How did you grow? What's next for you? What's the next thing that comes as a result of it? How did it impact others? Did it change you in any way? Don't let experiences just happen and then go. If it strikes you as being something of significance, small, though it may be something that you need to take in and recall and write down, journal about. Remember when you're walking. Remember when you're listening to music, if that's what you do. Whatever your habits are, sitting in your backyard, whatever it is that calms you down, think of your day and the experiences of the day. You might already be doing that, just to say that's very important. That's where God is really working in you, in your experiences. And it presents you with the possibilities of changing things. I have two cousins. They're middle-aged. They're in their 40s. One is married. They're both married, one with children, one with not. Both of their mothers are living. They're both into into solving things. They're both wanting things to be different, wanting the world to have different resolutions to its problems, not wanting, having strong feelings about Putin and what's going on now, and about the way we have handled our politics in this country. Both have strong feelings about it. And so strong that when Kathleen called me, she said, I have a lot of friends, but a number of them I'm not going to be talking to anymore. They're not going to be my friends. I'm not talking to them. And I said, oh, Kathleen, why? Well, they voted this way. They see it this way. And I just don't agree. I'm offended by it. And I'm cutting them off. They're not going to be my friends anymore. I took a deep breath and I said, that's not a good thing. So I said, well, what do you think will be the consequences of that, Kathleen? Will you have any influence over them? Do you know why they feel the way? Have you asked them? Have you had a conversation? We can't talk. We cannot talk. I just get too upset. Talked to Julie, and Julie is saying the same thing about her mother. She said, my mother did this. She believes this. I can't believe it. I can't talk to her anymore. I get too angry. I'm not going to have a relationship with my mother anymore. And I thought, these are drastic decisions that you're making. Isn't there another possible way of dealing with this? These are people that you say were friends for 30, 35 years. Your mother is your mother. You're going to cut this all off. How about having a conversation? How about asking them some questions about how they arrived at this? Why do they see it this way? And saying to yourself, maybe saying to them, I don't see it that way. Joan Chittister offers that as a way of saying, I don't agree with it, I don't see it that way, but it's a calming thing. It doesn't incite, it doesn't get you all roiled up. I don't see it that way, and maybe we can let it be for now, and I'll ask some questions to try to understand more about your position. We've all heard that as a way of doing this, but go into your interior self and say to yourself, God, help me handle this. This is not a resolution. You wipe people out of your life, you have no influence of changing. You have nothing to bring to the table. You've cut them off. That is not, that's not what God wants. So learn to develop calm my mind, open my heart, fully present to the thin places within and without. Stay with it. Try to stay with it and calm down. Calm the language down. Change the subject if you need to. Revisit it at a time when you feel a little calmer and you have kind of a way of entering into it. But try to find out what's going on with people. That's what Francis is asking in the Laudate Si. He's asking for dialogue, not to shut things down. And he's asking us to talk to people we do not agree with. How are we going to do that if we're going to get all upset, angry, and say, I don't like the way you're doing it. I can't talk to you anymore. No, that's not what silence and listening generates. It doesn't generate more chaos. It generates a peace and a compassionate heart. And your goal, remember, to silence, to listening, is compassionate heart and love. And that's what changes the world. So give it a thought before shutting things off. Perhaps you don't, but stay calm. Stay calm. You have to trust your experiences and trust that they're a way of God speaking and working with you. Trust your own solitude. Trust the things that you see, that you feel, that you experience, because that's the way God is speaking to you. I calm my mind. I open my heart, fully present. There is nothing so like God as silence. There's another graph in your life. I hope it's okay. But in listening for new possibilities, have you noticed that in your life, things speed up the older you get? I've noticed this. It's like there's got to be some explanation for this. The days go faster, the hours go faster, time seems to evaporate. And you say it's all speeding up. How do I slow things down? I slow things down in my own mind. I slow things down in my own life. Deep breaths. Times when I do nothing. Doing nothing is okay. There's nothing wrong with sitting in a chair and relaxing. That was not religious life when I entered religious life. There was no such thing as sitting down and reading a newspaper. I had a superior came in and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I was reading the newspaper." She said, "Close the newspaper and go do something constructive." And I thought, that has all changed. That has all changed. Vatican II came along and said, it's okay to sit and do nothing. It's okay just to sit and be calm and take in the trees, appreciate nature, walk in nature. It's necessary. It heals the soul. It heals the psyche. It calms us down. I sit in my backyard, which I've turned into a garden, And I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to use the gas in my car. I can go into my backyard with my little dog and just do nothing, just sit there and be. Just being. It's that that phrase that God, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still. Be. Just being. Just being quiet. It's a great antidote to the way things are now in today's world. Be still and know that I am God. I'm here. I'm the creator of this. Come to me. Sit with me. Be with me. Be quiet. Turn the noise off. Silence has its own music. Silence has its own language. Silence is a dynamic. It's not nothing. It's something very critical. So be still. Listen to the music and the sound of silence. It works its way through your system, through your whole being, and it changes you. It allows you to live in a world that is very abrasive, very difficult to be in at sometimes. It gives you the mechanism and the richness and the fruit with which you can manage life. It's a very difficult world to be living in right now, but it's a world that you were placed in. You were not born at this time by accident, neither was I. You were not born with a different set of characteristics and qualities. You are uniquely you, placed in the now, not in the past, not in the future, in the now, in the now. And the now can be chaotic, but you have the wherewithal to go into yourself, into that still point and be quiet. Calm your mind, open your heart. Compassionate love will flow in. Take a deep breath, and I will give to you what Kay Kendall says on the fourth one, which is listening for new possibilities. Possibilities come out of our creative imagination, and they work on experience. So your experience is kind of the palette for creating new possibilities. It's what gives you the material, the raw material to look at and to say things could be different. It doesn't have to be this way. Have you noticed that there are times when life feels as if it has sped up? I think waves are rolling onto the shore, how quickly they move and change. As soon as one is finished, the next one comes along. Sometimes the details of daily life show up like that. Before we know it, only the milestone sort of events in life, graduations, weddings, births, deaths, make marks on our life's journey. All too often, we just brace ourselves for the next wave, rather than enjoy or be present with the one just passing by. We believe we have too much to do to take the time to reflect on the day or the event. How will we ever get it all done? And yet, by allowing ourselves to integrate our experience, there's more space for new possibilities. We feel alive and have energy. We're ready for the next wave and actually look forward to seeing how it builds and crusts and tumbles. Reflection can teach us to be better listeners to ourselves, to God, and to others. Wisdom tells us that something very important about taking time to acknowledge what happens each day is critical. This is a part of my listening practice. It can take the form of a journal, a walk on the beach, a conversation with a close friend, or some quiet time with myself. I learned to ask myself questions in order to become a more reflective listener to myself and to others. Try asking yourself those questions. What just happened? What did I learn? How did I grow? What's next for me? Did this impact my life? Did it impact someone else's? How does it relate to patterns in my past? What learning can I share with others? You know, there's a pattern and a rhythm in your life. Do you know what yours is? There's a pattern and a way of God working with you. A certain way of connecting things. There are dots that go from things in your life and experiences. A way that God has of moving you forward, helping you to grow. I've spent some time thinking about the rhythm of my life, and how I discovered it is to go back to experiences in my life that are connected. There's a way that there's a connection in the kind of experiences God has given me. And I've come to realize, I almost can say, oh, this is God working in me. This is the way God usually works in me. And this is kind of how it's going to play out. I can't predict it, but I know that there's a way that God has of bringing me to a point in my life of growth. And if I take the time to look at it, to maybe journal about it, I can see how God is working. I can see the connections, and it makes a difference in how I approach it, what I do with it, how I deal with it, how I appreciate it. I can appreciate God working in me in certain ways. And certain times when I think, oh, this is a big disappointment, I say, wait a minute, give it a little bit of time. And if I give it the time, I don't rush it, I don't judge it, I come to another point in time where I see that was really a good thing. The rhythm and the way, patterns in your life that God works with you. Very important, because if you know that, you can see possibilities. You can see the way God tempers you. I go back to the story of my mother years ago. It started way back then. That whole notion of wanting to be heard and having a mother who was willing to listen, who changed her whole schedule of the day to accommodate a little 5-year-old. That was a pattern. And then I used to sit at the table, the dining room table, when my 2 aunts and my mother were together, discussing politics, discussing family, discussing our family history, talking about religion. They didn't always agree, but they always respected one another. And I, as a little kid, will put up a chair and sit at the table. And I said to myself, if I don't say anything, they won't send me away. If I just sit there quietly and listen, because I wanted to listen. They were interesting and I wanted to hear what they had to say. I learned about my family history by listening to the 3 of them talking. And they would have tea. They'd have a big pot of tea in the middle of the table and they'd go at it. And I would just sit up at the table and I never said a word. I never asked a question. I hardly breathed because I didn't want them to send me away. And they never did. They never sent me away. And one day I said to Mom, did you ever realize I was sitting at the table? And she said, oh yeah, we all knew that. So I didn't fool anyone, but they never sent me away either. So it was, I watched that pattern and I say, okay, this pattern, God working with me. If you know your pattern, begin to chart it. See if you can chart it. See if you can do something with it. Right now, let's calm our mind. Take a deep breath. Calm your mind, open your heart. Where compassionate love flows. No judgments. Right now, hopefully no worries. Hopefully you're relaxed. And I'm going to ask Rosemary, and I hope whatever your experience is with this graph, remember it's the circle of life and time. It's the elements of time working through this circle of life. See what you can do with this one. And I would, was 5 minutes fine? Were you, it seemed, if you are, that's what I'll do again. Okay, let's put you on, Rosemary will mute people and we'll go with the graph. I'll do my, start. Are you okay? Can I bring you back? Rosemary? Everybody on silence? Hello?
Hello, it was great. Nadine.
Sorry,
Oh, that's okay.
we're here.
Okay. Once again, would anyone like to share? This one is a little, it went away, Rosemary. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Mark. Hi.
Hi, Mark.
I found this one a lot easier than the last one. And the reason I say that is part of it was our conversation that we've had up to this point. But I see this picture as being how I see the world, and the center is the pupil. And so you have an eyeball that's kind of looking out back at us. And the little infinity signs are the kingdom of God. And so we're not totally revealed as to how we bring the kingdom of God here on earth, but we're given insight that we are to bring forward. And on the right-hand side, it's our marked experiences that we can take with us, as you mentioned earlier, that we can build off of and make us uniquely, God's children. And then the little wave of hair at the top is just new opportunities that continue to flow into us if we choose to see them and use them as a means of changing things. And the little white balls are just constant stimulation that's constantly coming at us if we choose to either ignore them or be receptive to them.
Thank you, Mark. That was very full and rich. Thank you.
This is Mary.
Hi, Mary.
When I looked at it, I had my eyes half opened and half closed, and it was very, very ethereal, very soft. And it felt very much like the spirit, like being drawn into it. And then when I opened my eyes completely, it was clearer, but it was more of this world rather than interior.
Thank you, Mary.
This is Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Hi. I was delighted by the curvy lines of the three prominent figures, but what I especially liked was the magic carpet, almost the top one. And it shows a lot of movement, and it shows it coming out of the picture on the right side. And I kept wanting to go up on the right side and swoosh down and up and out of the circle, which to me felt very contained. It was very orderly. Everything was in place. And so I was looking at the possibilities of going outward.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is Pam.
Hi, Pam.
And I found myself much more drawn into this graph. And even starting from what might be viewed as the exterior, where the graph is surrounded by light. And all of those little piano keys are opportunities for that light that is God, that is spirit, to enter into us. And I saw all of these larger, the one with the infinity symbol and the one with the triangles, the one that looks like hair, all of them as, you know, perhaps the larger moments in life, the bigger experiences, the ones that could have brought us down. But there again comes the light that is the Holy Spirit that swells up within us. And at the very tip of the one that is filled with the infinity symbols, there is the tiniest little dot of light that could be viewed as the mustard seed. And I remember a quote. I don't know if it's, I can't remember the source, if it is from the Bible or from a sermon, but the essence is that not even the darkest night can extinguish the light of a single candle. And if we take that candle and we hold it and we move through life and we look at these other places in the grass where light and dark are more equal, and in the center where there is a half circle of solid light, and again, little dots of light or dark. And I found this one very enthralling. That 5 minutes went so fast. And I'm glad that I have it so I can look at it some more another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, this is Joe.
Hi, Joe.
I saw this mandala to be like the outer ring, like cogs of a time wheel going around. And I saw my goal is to find a center, to be centered. And I saw these swishes coming in the top one that look like hair, and the infinity symbols and the triangles to be kind of distractions. The swish of maybe fashion or how you're supposed to comport yourself, and the triangles, you know, how what's going on in the world, the companies going out of business or looking for new hirees, and the wars and all the stuff. And then the one to the right, more of my own compulsions of what I should be doing and shouldn't be doing, brought on by my past and my training and my background and all those things. Everything trying to kind of vie for my attention, and how difficult it is to kind of settle in and settle down and kind of brush them away so I can spend some time in the center where the light is. And the kind of, I'm in the middle where all the dots are. So there's some light and there's always some darkness going on, but I'm trying to have my center be more of that white light and less of the dots, to find peace and guidance and direction. And I spend about a half an hour in the morning trying to
meditate and usually on the prayers of the day, and it's, it's like maybe I'll get a few minutes of something out of half an hour, maybe a little teaspoon of some kind of something that I could say, well, that came from somewhere deep inside of me. And then, back out in the world where everything starts swishing around again.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, this is Mary Ann, and this will be quick. I want to build on what the last person said. I saw the march of time around the exterior in terms of the influences and each circle as the years marching around. But I immediately saw this as myself in the center, hiding, almost being obscured a little bit with a halo around me. And then the decades, the eras of my life, the triangle area being the upbringing I had in, as a Catholic church and the orderliness of the triangles. Then I had the career with multiple educational opportunities and degrees, the swish at the top, the excitement of that blossoming into the many things I was able to attain. And then the infinity symbols as, well, I didn't see them as infinity. I saw them as the family and the motherhood. And all of them, the three eras, actually obscuring me a bit and finding where is the little me at the center with the halo around it. Don't get lost in there. There's something else in the center. That's it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I had a very different view. When I first saw it, I had difficulty trying, what is this? And the first thing that came to my mind was that the top, and I didn't see it as hair, I saw it as a broom. And a broom sweeping. And a broom, you sweep away things that you're finished with that you don't want. And I saw it sweeping away the infinity symbols, which were completed projects or thoughts or things that you had traveled the path on and they're now finished. So it was sweeping away the things that you've already completed. And coming in on the right side, I saw in that lower arc, new and different and exciting things coming in. So it's not a very deep thought. It's just sweeping away the old, allowing room for the new and exciting to come in. And it's an overlay on top of time, the world and its people moving. So it's just basically sweeping away the completed, allowing new and different and exciting things to come in.
Thank you.
Not very deep, but that's what I saw.
Do not critique yourself. Don't diminish what's happened in your interior with this. It's all good. It's all wonderful. It's what God is doing with you. It's all good. It's all good.
Nadine, may I take a pause? We're nearing the end of what we thought this workshop would be, and I don't want to lose anyone. If you don't mind staying, Nadine, if someone needs to leave, if you'll just send me your email via chat, I'll get the recording of this to you so you will be able to see the remaining message from Nadine.
I was going to bring this. We're not going to do the third. That would just take us way beyond. So I was going to try to bring it to some kind of conclusion. You didn't get a break. I offered, but we stayed with this. I want to say this about your response to this graph. Is there anyone else who wanted to respond who didn't?
Stupid.
All right, let me just say this, the energy toward this one was much greater than it was toward the first one. The first one being something new and perhaps you're getting warmed up into it, but you had a much more energetic and fulfilling response to this one. And I was glad to see that. Anything that comes to you, flows through you is good. Don't critique it. Don't say anything about yourself that's negative. It's what you did was good work. You worked well with it. And I would encourage you to keep going. Look at things that are a little uncomfortable. I don't mean bad things, but good things like this that are a little bit uncomfortable, that stretch you a little bit, that move you beyond what you normally would do. It might open up some new channels in you. It might reveal some things that you hadn't thought of before, possibilities. So I would encourage you to do that. Do some sketching. Anyone can take a pencil and sketch and do things like this and see what it says to you, see what you think about it. It may be a new way of looking at things and looking at possibilities. Anything that opens you up is good, is positive. Don't critique negatively what you're doing. Everything you're doing is good work. It's God in you, and the God in you that you're responding to is prayer. That's holy ground. She called it the sacred art of listening because it's holy ground. It opens you up to God. That opens you up to everything in creation in a way that is compassionate and open and loving and forgiving So it's been a marvelous journey. You've been marvelous. It's been marvelous being with you. I hope it has been helpful in some way. It has been a couple hours of prayer. You have prayed. I thank you for all that you are, all that you bring to the world is good. So God's blessing on you. I have another closing prayer, if I can do that, Rosemary.
Please do.
And it's again from John O'Donohue, and you can see I love him. This is a prayer he wrote. It's called Benach, and it's a blessing. It just means simply blessing. And it starts out by saying, on the day when the weight deadens, I need my mind, I'm sorry, I need this. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance beneath you to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the thoughts that you have and the stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. God's blessings on you, and thank you so much.